Welcome back, everyone, to Pig's Ear in Review here at the Tojo Dojo, one of the only places where we're talking about what we've been playing and what we've been watching. Myshtuff, joined by Riku Rose, the Final Fantasy expert of us both.
Yeah, of us both, maybe not the world, but
Definitely of us both.
yeah.
So this week we got a fun little follow-up. So we did talk about Final Fantasy XVI, however many episodes ago it was. But today we wanted to go into a dedicated deeper dive on a few of the areas and essentially a spoiler cast as well. So I think the first few sections probably will still be relatively spoiler free, but if you care, probably skip a little bit, or that last part probably you can skip. But for this part, first part,
We'll put up a big picture of Richard Kind, the actor.
yeah, saying
when spoilers.
Yeah, you're going to be testing my editing skills with that one. That's going to require a lot of intensive After Effects and things like that. But I think I can make that one happen. I think I got it.
If it doesn't appear in the final video and you get this game spoiled for you, you know who to send deference to.
Yeah, naturally. But yeah, so really the categories I think we're going to talk about is the combat, character, side quests, and then once again the story. Okay, so it sounds like you have some very interesting thoughts about a few of these here, which I do as well. But I'll let you kick it off then.
So we're starting with the battle system, I believe, the gameplay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Normally, so everyone's comparing this to Devil May Cry, which is because the guy who made the battle system for Devil May Cry 5 was the guy who made this one.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen some people say like this isn't a Final Fantasy game because it's not an RPG. Firstly, get a life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we briefly talked about that in our last one, but basically, like, how do you even define what Final Fantasy is to begin with?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's such a broad term. Throw in a yellow bird and some Moogles, you're good.
Someone named Sid is probably in it. Like.
Yeah, a crystal here or there. You're pretty good.
Yeah.
I went one or two ways with the battle system.
Okay.
I really liked it at the beginning.
Okay.
I did not like the leveling system because it never felt like my character was getting any stronger or better.
Okay.
So there would legit be times where I'd pause the menu and go, oh crap, I've got like 8,000 ability points that I've just not spent.
You're right.
And then I'd level everything up. But then like I never really felt like I was getting that much stronger. Because in most RPGs, what's fun is when you level up and then you can literally be like, oh, I can see how much more health and look how much more damage I'm doing and stuff like that. Whereas I don't, especially with modern RPGs, so many numbers just appear on the screen all the time.
Yeah.
Whereas back in like the PS1 days, it was like 100 and then you leveled up, it was like 150 and then you leveled up, it was like 200. And it was like very plain to see and you understood what was going on.
There's a lot of stimulation, like overload in this game, not just with those numbers, but some of the attacks themselves. It's a very flashy game for sure.
Oh yeah, if you do like those like most powerful moves that each icon has.
Yeah.
Like there's the one that Ifrit does where it like essentially sets everything on fire.
Yeah.
And I do like that back to back with like the Ramu Thunderbolt with like the big flare thing, and the screen was just, it's a good thing I got OLED because
you were really testing the limits of your HDR capabilities.
The TV was sweating with some of the colors it was producing.
Well, I guess to the point of like the leveling system itself, I think the only benefit of sorts that I got was the fact that I could keep chaining things more and more. I don't think I got more powerful, but it was more, and maybe I mentioned this last time, but basically I got into such a rotation that I would do one of my first icon abilities and then cycle through all of them, and by the time I finished my last one, the first one was ready again, and I would just like rinse and repeat over and over and over again, basically.
Well, this is it. Is I played the game at first, and I was like, right, really actually take some focus to battles here, because like old Final Fantasy games, you could essentially play them one-handed. Sure. You know, you can like just go up and down, select what you want.
Sure.
It's quite slow paced, right? So this was a bit more like intense, where like got to dodge and then like counter attack. You got to watch for what kind of attack the person's gonna make.
Yeah.
There's clues based on like how they raise their arm, right? Do I want to go back? Do I want to go sideways? Things like that, right? The issue I had was that no one really felt different.
Like you had to implement different strategies or something?
Yeah, it was always right. I have to dodge backwards or sideways and then attack. That was pretty much every enemy.
Sure.
It weren't even like, say you were fighting some ice creature or whatever. Like, you're like, right, well, I want to be the fire character right now and use all my fire abilities. And they're different to the ice abilities or things like that,
Sure.
What I would have actually liked was if you, like, with each icon, if your fighting style changed as well.
Yeah.
If you were Ifrit, so you were more attacking, but your defense was higher. So it didn't matter if you didn't block or dodge as much.
Yeah.
But then when you're like Shiva, you're more ice-based, but you're more open to getting hit and taking more damage. Or you know what I mean? Like that,
Yeah, I was pretty much on autopilot, to be honest, for the most part. Like, I certainly was selective with which abilities I wanted to use, and like by the end you unlock a whole bunch, but I still relied on maybe like 3 or 4 the whole time. Like, I don't really think, I mean, I guess it's just down to personal preference what kind of attacks you'd like to see, but I never felt like there was a particular one that I gained that I always had to use on this one enemy. Like you're saying, it was like, no, I could just do everything to everything, and it kind of took away the thinking, I guess, which I assume they're doing on purpose. I mean, I guess they're trying to make this game, I'm assuming, appeal to more people, which I think it successfully did. But anytime you do that, you're clearly getting rid of something in exchange for that.
I think the issue is that, as I said at the beginning, I really loved the battle system. I think this game probably took me 30-35 hours.
I think I was about 26, 27, something like that.
Around 20 hours in, the battles weren't as fun as they used to be because they were still just the same, and they were more a means to get to more of the story.
Yeah,
like that was a shame, really, because the only ones then that were really special were like the icon battles,
right?
Because at least they were a little bit different.
Yeah, and I think the only time I died in this game 2 times, and they were both in the same battle where there was like a one-hit kill attack from some boss. The guy with like the big punching arms or whatever his name is, I forget, but yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And there was some one-hit kill bullshit that I couldn't avoid twice. Other than that, I never died in the game.
Yeah, I died a couple of times, but honestly, it was more I went into a battle with almost no health.
Right, yeah.
And like because your fingers are expected to do a lot in this game as well. Because you are attacking while also with your left hand, like if you want to heal or whatever. I don't know what Torgal's doing. There's the whole commands for Torgal, and I asked him to heal me, and it gave me like 5 HP.
I put that one. That was one of the. I'm already forgetting what it's called. The little extra abilities you can swap, not your icon abilities, but the little upgrades or whatever they're called, or the rings or whatever. One of the ones I always had on was Torgal. Was just like autopilot, just do whatever you want, and he just let me go.
Yeah, but that was kind of a shame because I felt like this was a battle system that was gonna have layers to it. And it was very front-loaded.
Sure.
You kind of got the gist of it quite early on, and once you got a hang of it, there was nothing really else to learn about it.
Yeah, it was more just customizing as you get abilities, but to your point, it didn't really change things that much.
No, because they were all just really as powerful as each other as well.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So I did enjoy it. I just would have liked some more variety.
But so do you, maybe this is not a fair question per se, but do you prefer this over turn-based, or would you prefer it to go back more turn-based?
Personally, I would prefer it to go more turn-based.
Okay.
But the Final Fantasy series has always changed its battle systems. Every game, the battle systems have been different. So I'm not against them trying something new again.
Yeah.
But that's just me being an old video game boomer. who liked what he used to like,
Yeah, no, I get it. It's been interesting too because apparently this game, I think critically has done very well, but commercially, apparently, I keep hearing stories or articles, even from like the creators themselves, saying they wished it performed better. But I don't know if that's just an artifact of just PS5 not being as widespread as it is.
I've heard mixed things. I've heard either like it did amazing like the first day, but then kind of tailed off, or they're
Yeah,
just not happy with the performance overall. They're kind of sending mixed messages, but I guarantee this is also one that's going to have legs because you got to think like in a year or two, this is going to come to PC.
right.
You know, like it sold 3 million. I want to say in like the first 3 days.
Yeah, probably
Like there was
something.
some tweet about that, and I remember them saying like I think it's like when Final Fantasy 15 like hit 10 million, it became like the best selling
Mhm.
non MMO
Yeah.
Final Fantasy. So it's not doing awful or anything.
Oh yeah, and exactly, and I definitely had fun playing this game for sure, and I think
Yeah,
people who do, for the most part, like it. I mean, yeah, like you're saying, there's people who complain saying, "Oh, it's not my Final Fantasy or whatever." But barring that, I haven't heard too much negativity for the most part about the game. But yeah, you're always going to have that split. I mean, the same thing happened with the Yakuza games where it's around, do you want to keep it as a brawler, make it turn based? But I like how they're sort of having their own, assuming that various series are going to continue separately, they're going to kind of have their own almost,
carry on. Yeah,
yeah. So for Final Fantasy, I'm not saying they have to make a split for per se, but I'm fine if they went back and forth. Like if the next, like if 17 was just a straight up classic turn based, I'd probably still be interested in trying it because it's a more
yeah,
modern turn based version. But
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was only 2 entries ago that they were doing a proper turn-based game, so
yeah,
it weren't that long ago.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
So, but yeah, the combat, I very much appreciated it because I love Devil May Cry and the Bayonetta games, and so I had a blast playing it. But even for me, I think here's the difference. When I play those games, they're relatively short, like 5 to 10 hour games, and I think that's why you can handle it in that time frame. But to your point, when you're going up on 30 hours of nonstop like that,
mm.
it does wear on you a little bit.
Some people become sponges as well. Some battles
Yeah,
go on way too long.
yeah.
Which the ones when you're like running through a town to get to the end boss, you should be hitting them like 3 times and they should be going down. You know,
Hmm.
but then when you get a room full of like 6 of them and each one takes about 10 hits,
Hmm.
it drags.
Yeah, but I guess for the sections where you did do the more like basically like Panzer Dragoon bird flying stuff, not like
Yeah,
battling. I mean, did you like that, or how did you feel about
yeah,
that?
yeah, 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 yeah. So there was like a bit of a joke that because my wife was sitting and watching me play it
Hmm.
after the first like icon we fought because you
Hmm.
fight it like 4 times.
Yeah.
Every time I went to fight the big boss, it was like, so how many times do I have to fight him? They're like 3. We reckon this one 3 times.
Yeah,
Okay,
let's keep it
you know,
tally.
and that was it. Literally, it'd come up like, oh, you slayed so and so. We're like, right, that's number one.
Hmm.
And then like they have a scene, and then they're like, oh, actually, I'm now the icon. And you go, oh, okay, got to fight him again. That's 2.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
Gotta love those RPG or JRPG tropes where I swear Yakuza was the worst with some of those. There's like 8 health bars on some of these motherfuckers when you fight it, and it's like, okay, like please stop for the love of God. So, but okay, cool, yeah, yeah. Combat relatively. I mean, it is, to your point, basically to sum it up, it's fun, but it kind of overstays its welcome a little bit given the length of the game. But it's a fun time still, generally speaking, I would say. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. All
All
right,
right.
on to the characters. All right, who's your favorite?
I like Uncle Byron.
That I would love a game of, or like a spin-off of just him. He cracked me up.
Yeah. 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 I thought a lot. So the thing that I found weird with the characters in this game
Uh-huh.
is I thought half of them were great or amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Then the other half were pointless to just didn't need to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like it was very 50-50. I felt like when they looked at the characters they'd fleshed out,
Yeah.
they kind of panicked and threw some other people in.
Yeah, I can see that. It's interesting too, because like, and not even just the characters, but like the setting as a whole. That's the other interesting thing about Final Fantasies. They'll flip between like, obviously seven. It's not cyberpunk per se. It's just whatever you want to call industrial, I guess. But then you have these medieval fantasies. But I do like that about Final Fantasies. They don't always have to stick to just one setting, and then you get these different like dynamics and all that. So
Hmm.
that is fun to see as well, just more broadly than just the characters itself.
Yeah, I mean, this yet again is very much a inspired by Game of Thrones thing, where they're not
Hmm.
also afraid to kill people off or get rid of characters.
Yeah, good point. Hmm.
Um, Final Fantasy famously has had some characters die
Hmm.
in the past,
Yeah,
but it's not a series I've ever gone into being like, right, who's gonna die?
sure.
You know,
Hmm.
I think like for instance, Final Fantasy like 12, for instance, like all your main characters make it through to the end there.
Yeah.
Same with 8, same with 9. You know, like no
Hmm.
one. It's not a series that's just chopping heads off like Game of Thrones was.
Yeah.
But this one, like quite a few people die.
Hmm.
Since we're not in our full spoiler territory with
Hmm.
the story yet, like one of the main characters dies like halfway through,
Hmm.
and I thought it was really good. It made sense to the story.
Hmm.
The issue then is that they don't really replace them with any like you know what I mean, like with anyone of substance.
Which sucks because I loved that character. I mean, I think probably most people do, but
Yeah,
it sucked to see that happen. I mean, yeah, it was impactful, I guess, but yeah, to your point, there's like a hole that's there at that point. So yeah.
yeah, because like the story skips around as well. Like it goes forward in time. It's not afraid to go forward like 5 years or whatever.
Yeah. Hmm.
When it does that, a bunch of characters are just introduced as if like for these last 5 years.
Yeah, that was actually a little jarring for me. Granted, maybe I wasn't paying enough close attention, or I was just like staring off for a second. But when that time jump does happen, I was like, what just happened? Did I miss something?"
Yeah, but the thing, my issue with the fact those characters just appeared was that they also didn't then do anything. They weren't coming out with you on missions,
Hmm.
but they were like treated as if like, well, anything serious happens, we got to go talk it through with Otto.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, and then you go, but literally he's just like an NPC who stands in the bar,
Hmm.
and that's it. Like he doesn't do anything, doesn't come out on missions,
Yeah.
but he's like one of the main guys you've got to talk to all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they had to do it for some reason, just to have in the setting to give you some missions and progress the story, I suppose. But yeah. Mm.
Yeah, and that's it. Is like also some characters I felt were a little underdeveloped, especially the different kingdoms and stuff.
Yeah.
Because I think Dion, the blonde guy, the dragoon,
I think that's right.
I
Yeah.
think you see him for like one scene in the first half of the game,
Hmm.
which is a shame because he's a really good character.
Hmm.
But he then is quite like backloaded, to
Hmm.
say the opposite to front loaded, where
Yeah.
then everything happens all in like the space of 2 hours. Whereas the
Sure.
thing that was great about Game of Thrones, which this game took a lot of cues from,
Hmm.
is literally each episode would show you each kingdom all the time.
Got it.
So you had these 5 or 6 stories that were all building at once. There's enough cutscenes in here that I really think you could have flashed like, let's just see 5 minutes of what's happening in that kingdom.
Oh yeah, they were not afraid to flesh out the story in this one with the cutscenes.
No, but for the most part, it would just be like Clive and Jill talking, you
Yeah.
know, or whatever. But I would have preferred if it had done a bit more world building with those characters as well,
Yeah.
you know.
Y-
And
Yeah, I'm wondering, did they just try to shove too much? It's not even too much, but maybe they just didn't plan out the story to be more even, or they purposely maybe backloaded it. I don't know. That's a tough one.
and I know like game development doesn't work this way, but it kind of feels like someone's written a book
Hmm.
from beginning to end.
Yeah.
Whereas in game development, you can go back and go, well, let's add this in.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know, it felt like they made it on paper, like with a pen, and couldn't go back and add stuff in.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's tough too with a game of this scale as well. Of like, if they wanted to do that, how easy would it be to slot some of that stuff in. I mean, who knows? But
Yeah, and I know you technically have party members during the battles, but they might as well have not been there.
yeah, I feel like they didn't. I mean, I may have gotten help here or there, but it was just a solo show at that point.
Yeah, and one of the things that I love about the Final Fantasy series is you feel like your party is going on an adventure,
Right.
whereas it very much felt like Clive's journey, and occasionally Jill would tag along, or Sid would tag along,
Hmm.
or
Yeah, exactly. It seemed very. I mean, they all had their own fun personalities, which I guess is good. But I don't. Yeah, some of them did stick out, like Sid. But I guess to your point, and maybe this is more the back half. I kind of don't remember a decent amount of the characters. I get almost. Um, I don't know. I guess I need to play other. Still want to play other Final Fantasies. It's on my list to eventually get through. But I have to imagine, like when I think of Final Fantasy VII, I very much remember all those characters and
yeah.
what they did and kind of their motivations. But with this one, I kind of forget some of them already, and I like just recently played it.
Yeah, there's like even some characters like Gav, who, like for the first half of the game, they're essentially like, oh yeah, you just stay at the hideout, or you go ahead and sniff it out for us, Gav. And he's like, yeah, sure thing. And then he
Mhm.
kind of starts coming along with you. I'm like, he kind of should have been there from the beginning. You should have built a relation. Like,
Mhm.
how much better it would have been if like Clive was on his own at the beginning, but slowly he built up this family, which they kind of say he did,
Yeah.
but you kind of more get told it than see it.
On that note, Gav, is he the one that's kind of an idiot?
He's
Wait.
the blonde guy with the ponytail with one eye.
Okay. No, no, no. I'm
Yeah,
thinking of. All right. While we're talking,
the big hench guy with the backpack. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Is he, all right.
I
I'm gonna.
just called him. I called him Hodor because he is clearly inspired by Hodor from Game of Thrones.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind. No, no, no. Okay. So yeah, who's the guy that
Ah,
I'm thinking of? Who's in that hideout?
he's
Who
like the
I
gentle giant. Yeah.
That guy. Yes, that guy. Whatever his name is. I just like at first when he started speaking, and I'm like, is this guy like doing a joke of some kind, or is he like slow? I can't quite. I don't want
Yeah.
to be offensive, but when I heard him talking, and I'm like, is there something wrong with him? Like I couldn't
So
tell.
in Game of Thrones, there's a character called Hodor who's like a
Okay.
big guy and he's like 6'5",
Okay.
but he's essentially got like the mind of a child.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's clearly inspired by him.
Okay, yeah, because of course I've never watched Game of Thrones. I've heard all sorts of stories and whatnot. So, and I know clearly
Yeah.
it's inspired at least for sure by that setting and all that. But okay, anyways, I mean the character was fine. It just like stuck out. I'm like, what's wrong with this guy? Can I do something?
Yeah, I think the intention was that he's like got the mind of a child
Okay,
essentially.
got it.
Yeah,
But yeah, no. But in general, when I did interact with a decent amount of characters, I guess it was fine. I hesitate to say they weren't memorable per se, but I don't know. They were fine, I guess.
they could have been fleshed out more.
Yeah, yeah,
There could have been more moments between the characters.
yeah. I would agree. I would agree with that one.
Yeah,
It was nice to see Joshua and Clive doing their thing before we get into more spoilers and their relationship.
yeah,
Yeah, I like that as
yeah.
well.
That's probably the relationship that gets fleshed out the most. Even the Clive and Jill one kind of takes a back burner,
Yeah,
and then like at the very end they kind of bring it back up again. So for the good middle portion of the game, they barely talk to each other much, unless it's about what's happening.
yeah. I could see that. Um, and then maybe this is more going into the story, I guess. But it is interesting how Clive is this all powerful being, but if I'm understanding correctly, he's technically still like a servant to the kingdom. I guess. Like, could he not just like kill everyone if he wanted to? Like why is he kind of this
Do you
servant,
mean at the
quote unquote?
beginning or
Uh,
when he's like taken into slavery?
in general, both, I suppose. Like, I feel like I didn't quite understand that dynamic, to be
So at
honest.
the beginning, it was he is serving his dad's kingdom, so he's
Right.
like his brother's sword.
Yeah.
Which I guess he still sees as somewhat noble and stuff. He's still serving his family, and like he loves his brother and his dad clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And his dad's not like a bad man or anything.
Sure.
It's it's later in the game when he's like sold into slavery or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, why don't you just take a firebolt to the non-magic people's face?
Exactly.
I think we talked about that before, but I didn't quite understand the slavery part of this game.
Right.
Because they essentially enslave the people that can use magic to get them to, like, make the fields green and provide water and stuff like that. But if you're more powerful than the person that's holding you hostage, why don't you just overpower them?
Right. So I don't know if I missed something where, like, there's some magical MacGuffin where they have power over them themselves. Like, there's some other item or something that makes them do it. But no, I don't think I got that. So I'm not sure.
No, yeah, I had no idea quite why that was. Like,
yeah.
If anything, it should seem like the people that are non-magic are like toiling away on the fields and
right.
While the people are drinking wine in their castles out of crystals, they've just it was that was strange to me.
Yeah.
There might be a reason in if you go read through all the lore in the library in the game and stuff, there might be a reason why, but it's not explained in the main story.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Anything else to say about the characters for yourself right now? I've got more stuff. That's probably more story though.
Sure. No, I just found this is probably just my own stupid American ignorance and just dumb thinking, but I just found it funny that the main character's name was Clive for some reason. I don't know why.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's like your mate's granddad is named Clive.
Right. That's like a very proper English name to me, and it's just funny to me.
His voice made me laugh as well.
A little bit, yeah.
Not because it was bad, but just because of how serious it always sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just imagine him going to Target and being like, "Can you tell me where the electronics?"
Yeah, right over there, sir. And then on that note,
sold me into slavery.
It's an aisle too, sir.
This is a Wendy's.
Yeah, exactly. And then of course Sid's voice by Ralph Ineson, who, goddamn, that voice.
Yeah, he's very not name famous in the UK, but that voice.
Oh yeah.
Like he was in The Office, the UK Office.
Mm-hmm.
There's a TV channel where he always does the voiceovers. Coming up is this show.
Right.
And I even listen to UK Sport Radio.
Yeah.
When I'm in the car, called Talk Sport, and he does the the bits in it. There's Talk Sport,
Sid, why are you talking about football today? What's going on?
Yeah. Today, boxing.
And it's funny too because right around the time this came out, Diablo 4 came out, which I have not played, by the way, but I've heard he does a voice in that game as well, which is funny. So
yeah, he's got a very distinctive but awesome voice.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, he could fucking read me a recipe on the back of a box of brownies, and I'd probably listen to it. So it's just funny. He's got a great voice. But no, other than that, I think I'm good on the characters. Side quests might have to be almost solely you because I think I did 2 to 3 side quests total.
I did 2.
Yeah. Well, I told you the one about the chocobo, right?
Yeah, and I did that one.
Okay. That one. Yeah.
My issue is the side quests also in the main story.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Because the side quests that I began past people and they're like, I need tomatoes. Can you please get me tomatoes? And that's very, very stereotype RPG side quest, right? The kind of thing that people make fun of.
Yeah. And
Yoshi P, who is the guy who made this Final Fantasy, also made Final Fantasy 14.
Right.
And his whole team moved from that to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can tell with the side quests and some of the fetch quests in the main story that they come from an MMO too. Because there is literally a part halfway through the game where they're like, oh, there's trouble in these 3 places. Can you go check it out?
Yeah.
And you go and they're like, bandits. Can you take care of the bandits? And you go, yes. And they go, thank you.
Yep.
Adds nothing to the story.
Right.
Anything. And then you go to the next town. They're like, these things
just keeps happening.
and you go, okay, I'll go do all the things, and you go do all the things and come back, and they go,
Yeah.
thanks, and you go, right, well that added nothing to the story, and it just adds like an hour and a half, 2 hours to the game. Not needed, just felt like padded.
Sure.
And I think the game would be better if that was just taken out.
Sure.
Even the side quests. I think it was Final Fantasy VII Remake. I did all the side quests, right? They weren't great or anything, but there was like 20.
Yeah.
And that was it. But I did them because there weren't that many, and I loved that world, and I wanted to build the lore up or whatever. Whereas this, that I'd go into the map, and there was just green little icons everywhere. And every time I walked past the people, it was pointless crap.
I have heard some of the ones towards the later. I don't know if it's later in the game per se, or maybe if you just do enough of them, they do have more story impact. But I once again didn't do them, so I'm not sure.
But you know what? Take out that chunk that I was talking about.
Yeah.
And put them in there.
Yeah. Oh, agreed.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
don't like hide it behind crap. You know, like because they, for instance, like something happens with Torgal, and they're like, "We're gonna have to look into this." And you're like, "Okay." And then I'm guessing they're doing a side quest, but I couldn't be bothered to go fetch like 8 apples to find out.
They'll be fine.
Yeah,
we'll get over it. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, granted, I'm slightly biased as well because we've talked about this before, where open world games in general are a little boring for me, where I don't want to do them to begin with. Like a good example, I think I mentioned last year.
Open world.
Yeah, well, as another side tangent. Yeah, I mean, it's ish. I mean, it's open. There is once you get into an area, it is open, and then those are sort of separate little bubbles, more or less.
See, I don't think of this as open world. And I guess, like, technically, when you look at the definitions, it probably is.
Yeah.
But the same way I don't look at, like, Ocarina of Time as, like, open world anymore. Because that game isn't, like, big and fast like a Grand Theft Auto, or even, like, a more modern Zelda, like Tears of the Kingdom. Because it's like broken up in the section.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like when you have to go through loading screens to get from area to area, like, to me, that doesn't feel like open world.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's just me. So I don't think of this as like an open world RPG.
Yeah, it's actually funny too, because I remember earlier this year when Sonic Frontiers or whenever it came out, sorry, can't remember anymore, but people were asking them before they released, is this going to be an open world Sonic? And they coined a new term that I had not heard up to that point called open zone.
I would describe this more as that. Yeah,
that's basically what this is. It's, yes, once you're in this zone, do whatever the hell you want, but yes, there is a separation between them. But it's funny that you would say Ocarina of Time, because I'm wondering, like, I guess that would qualify for that term as well to an extent, because you're in this little bubble, but then you have to wait to go to the next one. So.
Yeah, you're not like running or riding a car or whatever.
Right.
The game is from one corner of the map to the other uninterrupted.
Yeah, exactly. So it is funny how, and I'm trying to think though, is the Final Fantasy 14 and I guess 11, that's more traditionally open world, right? Those are.
No, that's zones.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think that's an MMO thing though, because they don't want 3,000 players spawned in one area. That's
fair. Okay.
So they like break it up in the chunks or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I gotcha.
I'm no game designer, but I think that's probably the logic behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. But yeah, there's all these side quests, and for most of these open world games to begin with, I generally don't do them. I mean, God of War Ragnarok was a great example where I actually did do a few of them because they actually felt like they were contributing some sizable chunks to the story. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like the main story, but you definitely got like benefit out of it from doing them, which was amazing.
Or even Tears of the Kingdom, the side quests were fun. Mm-hmm. Like every time I saw that guy with a sign, in Tears of the Kingdom, I helped him because it made me laugh.
Yeah, exactly. I had to stop and help him. I don't care what I was doing.
Yeah. But you know what? That's an emotion the gameplay itself is not giving me,
Sure.
right? The gameplay itself it's the fact that that guy's face and his voice and his
Yeah.
actions are making me laugh. It makes me want to do the gameplay in it.
It needs to be meaningful. Getting
Yeah.
a bushel of apples means nothing to me.
No, it's time wasting. That's all it is padding.
Yeah, exactly. The one thing I will say, though, and I found out about this, I think, after the fact, when another friend of mine was still in the midst of playing it. I guess some side quests, which is nice, have a little marker to help like signify that, oh, these are like quote unquote important ones. Is that the
Yeah.
case? Okay.
Yeah, it's a little plus sign. I think it'll make your potion pocket bigger, or like
Okay.
give you the chocobo, or things like that. Whereas the
Got
other ones are like, yeah, thanks for the apples. Now
Right.
fuck off.
Exactly. So, I mean, I guess there's that kind of helps you. I guess maybe really quick as well. That's maybe sort of side quest ish, but more maybe getting back to the general world. As far as like all the shops and everything, the weapon upgrade system I think was relatively straightforward. I guess. I mean, I always found random shit in the world, and I think to your point earlier, I didn't always feel like I had to upgrade things, but I would more
No.
just go, oh, I had a bunch of shit in my inventory I can now use to upgrade. Hey, I guess I'll just go do that now.
Yeah, I would literally be at the hideout where the store is and be like, geez, it's been like 3 hours. I haven't seen if I've got anything more. I can get something more powerful. Because
Yeah.
that's the thing as well. When there's not a big challenge with the battles, you're not as motivated to try and improve all the time.
Yeah, exactly. Mhm.
Yeah.
So there was that. The one thing I will say was slightly annoying was I wanted to keep buying music, but they were ungodly expensive compared to like
Yeah.
everything else. I don't know why.
I didn't do that just simply because I was expecting there was going to be some powerful sword later on that's like 100,000 gil. And I'm
Exactly.
like, and then I'm going to be angry if I bought like Sid's theme.
Right. That's exactly what I did. I don't know why they were so stupidly expensive compared to everything else. That was a bit of a weird
Make
one.
you play it more and collect everything. There's probably some trophy that says like collect all the music.
Probably, but like I wanted to
Yeah.
listen to it, but I literally never bought a single one. I was like, well, all right. That's
Have you
kind of
heard
annoying.
about this website called Spotify?
No, I want to be
Yeah.
immersed in the game with this music. But yeah, as far as side quests, yeah, nothing too crazy.
I think that's the biggest negative in the game.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree on
the
that
side
one.
quest. Yeah.
All right, now
All right.
on to the story.
Right, we're gonna get really spoilery now.
Yeah, just a little bit. So once again, Richard Kind's face is probably somewhere on the screen right now, warning you right now.
Okay. So, who wants to go first?
You finished it more recently than I do, so you probably remember it more than I do, to be fair. Go for it.
First things first, how did you take the ending? Like, I kind of liked how open-ended it was. My wife didn't.
I'm fine with... No, I think I was fine with the open-endedness. To be honest, I was surprised to... I guess maybe that's the good part about it is there were different interpretations. Like, because at first I was like, oh, like, they're dead. Well, I couldn't quite tell who was dead and who wasn't. And then I didn't realize at first, like, oh, it's different. Yeah, there was just a difference in thoughts of like who's dead versus not. And especially because at the end, if I'm remembering correctly, there's a book and it says it's written by Joshua, if I'm not mistaken, right? And I'm like, oh, but does that mean he's dead? Or is he now dead? Or is Clive... Sorry, I'm probably misremembering it.
Here's how I remember... this is how I interpreted it.
Okay.
When I played the game and watched it like live, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Clive comes back from the battle, Joshua looks like dead.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he used the power of the Phoenix to bring him back because it like healed the wound.
Yes.
Right. And then Clive like is on the beach. He has the whole like stone hand or whatever, and it seems like he died.
Yes.
And then I took that as Clive sacrificed himself for Joshua.
Okay.
I took that as Joshua survived because he healed him. Otherwise, what's the point of doing that thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Joshua went on to write this book about the story. And then that last scene is like hundreds or thousands of years later, where that story is kind of like the Bible of today, where there's people who believe it, there's people who don't.
It's a fantasy.
But you know what I mean? Like, there's
Yeah,
no
yeah.
way that, like, it's like, technically, I think no one really knows if Robin Hood existed or not.
Sure, sure. It's a myth, a
Like,
legend. Yeah.
yeah, like, there's you can go either way, I think, depending on it. I've never looked into Robin Hood, but that's what I've always
Hmm.
been told, is that, like,
Sure.
it can go either way depending on what way you lean, you know?
Yeah.
So I kind of got it that Joshua was the one who, like, told the story after it happened. So that's
Yeah.
why I thought he survived.
Got it.
Um, I think they kind of left it a bit open ended based on the modern. We could make a sequel out of this stuff.
And I guess on that note, really quick, they haven't said, or I think they have said that no DLC is planned, but they wouldn't mind. There's someone who's creating
There is
it.
a big hint about DLC in this game, and I don't know if you picked up on it.
Oh, maybe not then.
When Joshua's like looking at the end at the mural of all the icons,
Hmm.
he goes like, "Oh, they even in this thing included Leviathan, the icon that went missing."
Oh,
And I'm
okay.
just like, okay, well, I'm sure we're gonna fight Leviathan in the DLC.
Sure. I mean, to be fair, I think this game did feel complete. Like, I don't think anything
Yes,
was lacking per
yes,
se. But of course, with a game of this nature, they're gonna think about adding more. So I get it. I get it.
yeah. I would prefer if they left it alone, but then
Hmm.
also I thought Final Fantasy X-2 kind of ruined the ending of Final Fantasy X. Like I've never replayed X-2 just because I think that ending is great on its own,
Okay.
and it's like I like The Last of Us too, but how The Last of Us just has like probably one of the best endings in a
Yeah.
video game ever. But the moment you explain what happens 5 seconds after that, it takes away from it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
like that's the thing is here, if they did Final Fantasy 16 2 or whatever, they're going to have to explain a few things,
Right. Right.
which kind of then underdoes what they've already done with
Sure.
the ending there.
Sure. But yeah, no, I certainly enjoyed the ending. Yeah, I guess it wasn't quite what I was expecting. But and then just coming back to what I was saying earlier, just the fact that Joshua comes back. Um, I don't know. Maybe I can't say I was like ultra surprised, but it did seem odd that he was gone so quickly in the beginning, and then all of a sudden at the end, or not end, but what, like halfway point roughly, you kind of like reunite with him, which was nice. So
I think it would have made more impact if they weren't either hinting or showing him alive the entire time. Because
that's
when Clive
true.
first sees him, he's shocked. And I'm like, yeah, I've known for fucking 12 hours. Like,
Yeah, yeah, that's a good
you
point.
know, I think that would have had more impact at that point. If there'd maybe been hints about a weird hooded figure, which they start with, but only lasts like an hour,
Right, right, right.
and then it's him. If
Yeah,
they'd carried on where you weren't sure who this person was, and then like it was revealed to be Joshua, the
hmm,
same time Clive finds out halfway through the game.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, as far as, and once again, correct me if I'm misremembering, but one of the essentially the big things about the disaster that happened kind of in the beginning is really because the mom was evil, essentially, right?
yeah, she kind of sold him out
Right, yeah.
essentially. Yeah,
So that was
the mum was
interesting.
the mum was a great villain,
Hmm.
but yet again she was kind of underdeveloped.
Yeah, because like I know Benedicta was in it a bunch as kind of this like controlling person, and then you kill
She
her or whatever.
disappeared. They really focus on her for like the first 5 6 hours, and then that's
Yeah.
it. Um, and that's what I was talking about earlier with Dion, where they kind of focus on one bad guy at a time.
Hmm.
It would have been more interesting to see them all interacting with each other,
Hmm.
undercutting each other, teaming up with each other, and then slowly watching each of their downfalls and how it affects each other.
Yeah, I feel like there was almost, I don't know if it's there's too many of them, but to your point, I'm trying to think if each one of them individually was that impactful for me. Like I kind of remember fighting them and roughly what their motivations were, but I don't see like it felt like, oh, here's this other kingdom. Okay, now here's this other kingdom. Okay, here's this other kingdom. I'm like, okay,
It wasn't until about halfway through the game I really knew what was going on in the world.
right, right.
Because it really drops you in the middle of it. And it's like, this kingdom's fighting this kingdom. And I'm like, okay. And because they're like weird names or whatever that are quite foreign to us,
Yeah.
and they use different terms for different. They're like the Republic versus the Empire, and I'm like, wait, are
Yeah.
the Republic and the Empire the same, or are they different? Or
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
what one's Wylud, and then what one's Ash and Storm, and so I was like, what? And it got about halfway through the game, and I was like, thought I had the hang of it, but then they threw something else at me. I'm like,
Mhm.
what is who is fighting who? Who's on whose side? And I went into like the menus where you can just read like the
Mhm.
lore.
Yeah.
I was like, right, I just got to get a grip of what's going. I'm looking at a map and stuff like that, and that was a shame
Mhm.
because having played half of Final Fantasy 14 at this point, I've
Mhm.
played the base game and 2 expansions.
Yeah.
That does an amazing thing of slowly introducing you to the world, explaining what each town or country their views are, or where they stand in conflict and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And then it brings another one in and tells you everything,
Sure.
right? But this kind of just threw you in the middle. It felt like you started season 3 of Game of Thrones.
That's a good point. But I mean, do you think with 14 it could do that because it's just a longer form ongoing game, or no, not necessarily?
Well, no, because when you think it does it with the first game, the base game, right, before the expansions,
Mhm.
it still does it in that, and that is like you can beat that in like 40 hours.
Okay.
Same as this,
Sure.
if you just mainline the story.
Got it.
So, and then it's when the expansions come in, it'll introduce a new town
Mhm. Mhm.
in the world or whatever. So I don't think because even like granted, like I always say, this is why I really like Final Fantasy X. Have you played that one?
Funny enough, I got about halfway through it years ago, and I never picked it back up again. So
Okay,
I've been meaning to. I had a fun time playing it.
but Tidus is from another world,
Mhm.
so everything he's experiencing for the first time, the player is also experiencing for the first time.
Sure.
So them explaining everything to him like he's 5 helps you.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Which makes sense in the context of the story as
Sure.
well. So that I would have just preferred if maybe we'd started at the beginning of the conflict and not what felt like halfway through, or if they
Sure.
just took the time to explain it a bit more. Because
Mhm.
that lady Vivian, who's in the hideout, essentially does the Doc Brown in Back to the Future 2 with the
She's
chalkboard, where she gets up like images, and she's like, "This is what's happening right now. These people are angry at these people."
Yeah, a little too direct exposition all at like that. That's funny. Yeah, it's I'm not one to or sorry, I don't mind if there's lots of cutscenes. Like I know we joked like there were some Metal Gear 4 levels of cutscenes and all that. And I don't care about that if the
No,
story is good and it's meaningful, and all that kind of stuff. But I
yeah.
think I don't know, towards the end, I felt it dragged a little bit for me personally. It could have been really really solid. It's just yeah, I just felt like more confused.
I felt the same with about half after that Bahamut battle.
Hmm.
It felt like everything kind of fell apart because you had one person you were now fighting. There were no kingdoms fighting each other.
Yes.
It literally just felt like you against one guy at that point.
Hmm.
Whereas every other point, it felt like you were in the middle of something that was going down in this wider world.
Sure.
So I think that the story does kind of start to fall apart at that point in
Hmm.
terms of feeling like a grand epic where you're in the middle of something. Because essentially the entire world at that point's in chaos and they're just waiting for you to destroy the last crystal,
Yeah.
which didn't need to take 10 hours.
I would agree with that one.
Focused on that one thing. If you had sprinkled some more story beats in between and stuff, like
Hmm.
that Dion guy just goes off and does his own thing for a bit. Like you could have gone with him,
Hmm. Yeah.
or have a thing with Jill, have a thing with Joshua.
Yeah, I agree with that one. Um, the other thing randomly that came to mind as a follow up from earlier. So yeah, Sid dying halfway through. Ugh, they shouldn't have done it. I mean, I don't know if they should or
I
shouldn't
liked
have.
it. I liked it.
It
That's
did
why
have
projected. It
impact.
moved the story on.
It did. It did. I think a lot of people really like that character. Was all.
Yeah, I've got no issue. It's what always shocked me about the whole Last of Us 2 discourse, where everyone got upset about a character dying in that.
Yeah.
And it's like, as long as there's a good reason for it to
Sure.
happen, I don't even care that in that game that it happened the way it happened, right? Because as long as it gives if it makes sense in the story,
Yeah, I agree.
then I think it's worth doing.
I just wouldn't be surprised if they did do DLC or a spin-off game if they had one focusing on him. That would not shock me.
You could do, but that's another thing as well, like where they don't really seem to flesh stuff out. They kind of hint about his past and tell you very vaguely
Oh yeah.
his past.
Mm-hmm.
But that is something they could have gone into.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, they seem to focus on some of the weirder things in this.
Yeah, I would agree with that one. And then the other weird part as a follow-up to that is the fact that Clive takes his name. I didn't quite understand what that was about.
I think it's that whole Batman thing where it's like the name sort of carries the meaning.
Yeah.
Behind things. You know, where if the world thinks that Sid's dead, then they think the cause is dead.
Yeah, all right.
You know, but if there's another Sid, then we're still going ahead. You know.
Okay, I like that. I like that explanation. Okay, I can get behind that.
That's what I thought of it, because I mean, not but when Hitler died, Germany fell. You know,
always comes back to that. If any conversation goes on long enough, it's always going to come back to.
We always bring up Hitler.
This is a staple of our show here, folks.
But no, it's that thing of when a leader falls, generally the country falls behind
Sure,
it.
you need that figurehead of sorts.
Yeah, exactly. But if that's it, if they don't know, if the general public still thinks that person is looming large over everything, then there's something to get behind.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that explanation. Yeah, I think that's fair. And then also, as a quick side note, is it basically a trope in every Final Fantasy to have a Cid? Am I missing something on that one? Or
yeah, there's always a Cid. I think it started in 3.
Okay,
there's a Cid in every game,
and it's no relation. It's just a thing they do.
Generally, they normally are involved in airships.
Interesting. Okay.
Or machinery in some kind.
Okay.
Because in 7 he's the astronaut and has the plane.
Yep.
8 would be kind of a spoiler, but he's the headmaster of the school.
Okay.
All right, but there's flying involved.
Got it.
Yeah, 9 he works on airships.
Okay. Do you know what the origin of that? Is there someone named Cid that they just liked?
I don't know where that comes from.
That's funny.
Because even in the MMO,
really, that's funny.
Yeah. It's that thing like Chocobos, Moogles, and that. There's just always a Cid.
Just always a Cid, just for fun.
They are on your team though.
Okay.
Normally they are an NPC.
Cool.
I think it's in 4, 7. And this one, I think, are the only ones where they're actually fighting your party.
That's funny. Yeah. I just remember hearing that from someone. I was like, oh, that's interesting. But yeah, I mean, as far as the story goes, I mean, I did enjoy it for sure, even though at parts it maybe dragged a little or if it was confusing at times for me personally. But yeah, I mean, I had a good time. I don't know if this is necessarily going to make me, because in general, I'm more of a sci-fi person than a fantasy person, but I can appreciate fantasy if done well, and I definitely appreciated the story. I don't know if it's going to make me suddenly go out and start watching Game of Thrones or other fantasy things, but it was engaging enough, I will say.
Yeah. I'm not normally the biggest fantasy, Lord of the Rings style. Times of fantasy, but I don't know. I've always leaned as well more towards sort of the steampunky side of Final Fantasy and stuff. I do like that setting.
And I mean, is 7 really the main one, or which other ones are there that are?
8 is sort of a very futuristic one as well.
Okay.
10 as well is
Well,
like
yeah, that's true.
10's a weird mixture where it's like half fantasy but half futuristic.
Hmm. That's probably
13's very
why
futuristic.
that's probably why I played 10 as much as I did, and I did like it. I just never got back to it because it
Yeah,
was engaging.
even 6 is like half and half. It's like the Empire has a lot of machinery and stuff, but then
Okay,
sort of like the good guys are a bit more villages and stuff like that.
okay, I can see
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
yeah.
very cool. But yeah, I mean, still overall, I had a blast playing it. If they do DLC or follow up of some kind, I mean, I'm definitely gonna play it. Like that's for sure. But yeah, I want to see them keeping on pushing the boundaries, so to speak, and trying different things.
I
I don't know.
yeah, honestly, I did dislike this game. I think I said to you or our group chat or whatever the other day.
Hmm.
I think this would be around the middle if I did a full ranking
Sure.
of my favorite Final Fantasies.
Yeah.
Right, it would be somewhere in the middle. Um, I don't think it's a bad game. I think it's a good to great game.
Hmm.
I don't think it's fantastic.
Hmm.
There's obvious areas where it could have improved and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, I coming from 14, I was excited for this team to go because 14 very much feels like a single player game trapped in an MMO.
Hmm.
But I would like to see another team do 17.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of would you want it to be more of that steampunky kind of setting or
I don't even care about that. Just give me something new, but like I've seen what these people can do now, and although I thought that 14 was a single player trapped in an MMO,
Mhm.
I still see their MMO tendencies, which I'm not a fan of.
Got it. Got it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. I mean, especially with like the side quest stuff that we were talking about. But
Hmm.
um, would you prefer the next one be similar open worldish, or would you want something more linear, or also it doesn't matter?
Yeah. Again, I just want to see. I want to see a team bring their project to life.
Yeah,
I don't even. I've never been one that's like, I want this.
sure.
It's just like present to me what you want to put out,
Yeah, yeah. And if
and
it's
I'll
good, it's
judge
good.
that based on its merits. Because as well with Final Fantasy, I didn't enjoy this one as much. Well, there's going to be the next one.
Do you often replay Final Fantasy games? Maybe other than seven, because I'm sure you have that one a bunch.
Mm. I used to, but I think there's also a thing of getting older
Sure,
where
sure.
you don't replay stuff as much.
Yeah,
Whereas when you're like 13 and you got the summer or whatever, you just like and you don't have the money to buy whatever game you want.
that's
I
a
was
good
like,
point
oh, I'll
too.
play 9 again. Why not?
I'm just in general trying to think: is this game replayable? And combat wise, I think it is. I mean, you're definitely. I mean, it's why people like to replay Devil May Cry games because the combat is fun.
Hmm.
With this game, I could see people replaying it, but I just like I don't know if there's a need to. I mean, I
There's
guess
not
is
really
there?
room to like improve it because, as we said about the battle system as well, it's not like you can get a lot better at it. Once you've kind of
Right.
mastered it, you've mastered it.
Yeah, is there a new game plus to this? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so I
think it
guess
just makes it more difficult.
yeah. So yeah, no, I agree with you. Like time wise, would much rather just play the next thing, which I have multiple games already after
Hmm.
16. But even if I did have the time, I'm like, yeah, I just don't know what I would get out of it if I did. Like with 7,
Hmm.
I feel like that's a world that's so beloved, and maybe there's bias there too. But like, it's a cool world to be in and explore. But like with 16, not that it's a bad world, but I'm like, okay, it's another medieval village. Like,
It's
okay,
also not like you can go in the towns and look in every shop and every bar, and
yeah,
the towns are very basic as well. It's a few people standing outside.
exactly.
Whereas even though it was only a few JPEGs back in the PS1 days, the world, like each zone felt unique.
Right.
You could go into the shop. There was a shopkeeper there,
Yeah.
but that was it was easier to flesh things out back
Uh huh.
then than
Right.
it is
Right.
now. It is more difficult. I
Eh,
won't hold that against them.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then once again, I've also said this plenty of times. I don't know if replayability in itself necessarily should factor into how good of a game it is. Because if you had a great
No.
time playing it once, then that's fantastic. You don't have to replay it. But I always do wonder that if how replayable a game could be. But with this one, I just don't know what I would get out of it if I did it again. So,
Yeah. No, if 5, 10 years down the line I want to experience this story again, maybe, then yeah, but
mhm.
it's not like the gameplay's got me like, oh, I just still want to fight another boss or whatever.
Yeah, and like I was saying before, if I do want this style, I'll play a shorter game like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, and I'll get the same like enjoy that kind of enjoyment, I guess.
Can I just say thanks for not putting a score at the end of the battles like those games do? Because nothing makes me
Oh,
feel worse than those battles being like, I'm like, I beat the guy, and they're like, D.
dude, you fucking suck.
D for dick, because that's what you are. I'm like, oh, okay.
I would agree. Yes, I agree. I always feel terrible. But yeah, so I mean, I think at that point, I mean, any other final thoughts from your end on this one?
Nothing I can think of right now. But
Okay.
yeah, I'd still give it a thumbs up. It's
Yeah,
still worth playing.
absolutely.
If you've got a PS5, it's certainly one of the games you should be playing this year.
It's beautiful. That's for
I
sure.
just don't think go into this expecting it to be like the best thing ever.
Hmm.
It is a very good to great game.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I'm the same way. Definitely, as someone who doesn't typically play Final Fantasy games, and granted, this may or may not be your typical one, depending on how you look at it. I had a blast playing it. But yeah, I would agree with what you just said as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, if anyone else has played it, which I'm sure there's probably one or two of you out there, let us know what you think. Who's your favorite character as well? And yeah, until the next one comes out, we will see you then. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.
Bye.